May I speak and may you hear in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I always think it's amazing how when something is happening important in a parish, the lectionary readings are always so appropriate. I couldn't have picked a better gospel to have on a day when we're gathering to celebrate our annual parish meeting. It's one of those gospels that the sting is in the tail, or perhaps the message is in the detail. When you get home today after Mass or after the annual meeting, and if you have a computer, I'd like you to switch on your computer and go to YouTube and then type in the top bit of the search engine for YouTube, the United Church of Christ. Advert bounces. The United Church of Christ in YouTube, then the advert bounces. There are actually a number of wonderful adverts on YouTube produced by the United Church of Christ. The two that caught my attention was called Bouncers and Ejectors. And it's nothing to do with porn sites, bouncers. It's the big guys that stand outside of a church, okay? It's not well-made women. So go onto YouTube and look out for these incredible adverts. They are so short that you might, as I did, have to rerun them 3 or 4 times just to get what really is being said, because they're over in a second or two. But they kick one heck of a punch. And I applaud the United Church of Christ for having such guts to produce such adverts. In Bouncers, you will see a scene on a classic Sunday morning somewhere in the United States. People are going to church, and you can hear the bells ringing, and you see 2 muscle-bound men standing in a menacing fashion with their arms crossed on one of those kind of rather nice red ropes with a little click, and they let so many people through. You've seen them outside of theaters maybe, or nightclubs or whatever. Behind them is this beautiful Gothic church with its bells ringing. A young gay couple, holding hands, walks up to the church. And the 2 bouncers say, "Step aside, please." They speak similar words to an African American girl. Clearly, she's not welcome either. And then there's a young Hispanic man comes up to enter the church amongst lots of white families going into church, and they speak similar words to him. And then there's a young man in a wheelchair, and they look at him and they say, "Not you." And then just what you realize is going on, the screen goes black. The men, of course, are church bouncers. The scene fades to a tagline on a black screen that says, "Jesus didn't turn people away, neither do we." Good on you is what I say to the United Church of Christ. That's Bouncers, and it packs a punch. Ejectors, I think, takes the whole thing even further, because now we go inside this beautiful church, and the organ's playing, and it's just before Mass, and you see all these lovely kind of classic white American families coming to church, mom, dad, and 2.5 children. And there's a single mom, not quite black, but not quite white, struggling with a baby that's making a lot of noise, and you can see people looking across at the noise. And then it flashes to a big red button on a control panel. You don't see a face, you just see a finger press the button, And the single mum with her baby goes ploing out of the pew, and she's ejected out of her pew. And then you look around the church and you see different people. There's a couple of gay guys, and one just starts to put his arm around his friend, and you see the finger go boing, and they go. And then there's an old lady, clearly, who's been a bit of a nuisance, and her walking frame goes up in the air. And then a rather smelly lady of the road walks in and sits down, and the people who are next to her slide very cleverly along the pew. And she too is ejected. Gone. Those adverts have been around for a very long time, but I just found them the other day. And then I did some research, and I found that they're about 30 seconds apiece. That 30-second advert bounces ignited weeks and weeks of national debate in this country when both CBS and NBC refused to air those commercials. NBC and CBS claimed that they were far too controversial. So the pundits weighed in, filling the airwaves and editorial pages with opposing views. Check them out. It's interesting that our television networks seem to be very, very concerned that they might offend the sensibilities of religious conservatives today. That they will refuse commercials like that actually break no FCC guidelines whatsoever. But clearly, they offend the religious right. I feel a little bit of gratitude, to be honest, towards those nervous television executives whose arguments sparked a very interesting controversy in our modern church, because they raised a question about something which should be very controversial for all of us, which has kind of slipped away. It's the H word. No, not homosexuality for a change. The other H word. Hospitality. Hospitality. Let me take you back to the very early church. Not long after Jesus had been around and left his message, and Christians were beginning to take his message very, very seriously. In the Hellenistic world in which those early Christians were trying to live the gospel, the earliest Christians practiced hospitality which set them apart from everybody else in their surrounding culture. Yes, of course, non-believers, non-Christians prized hospitality, but they understood hospitality as being something which had to be discriminate. In other words, it was directed towards your own family, to your own circle of friends, to your own influential social contacts. All of the people that you would want to be hospitable to could, of course, reciprocate and give you back that kind of level of hospitality. It was a way that you could always reciprocate your host's goodwill. Christian hospitality from the earliest times was completely and utterly different. In fact, it was notoriously indiscriminate. Because for the earliest Christians following Jesus, not only was every single person welcome, but especially those who were least likely to reciprocate in terms of what they could give you back. So the Bible tells us about the widowed, the orphan, the outcast, the leper, the tax collector, the prostitute, all of those people. They were to be the primary recipients for our hospitality. Not just the people you like, not just the people you find fun and good to be with. So the earliest Christians were beginning now to stand out like a sore thumb amongst the rest of their friends. And in a modest kind of way, Christian hospitality cut against the grain of social propriety, and it courted, wherever it was used and practiced, controversy in the ancient world. Hospitality has lost its cutting edge in our modern contemporary church, or at least in many of our churches. I think we no longer see hospitality as a weighty moral issue. Today, hospitality is more about social manners than it is about morals. But the hospitality of Jesus was always controversial. He chafed against the limits of social propriety by welcoming prostitutes and adulterers and tax collectors, crooks and outcasts into his presence. The hospitality of Jesus knew no boundaries, no safe boundaries. It was either hospitality or it wasn't hospitality at all. Some have said that the hospitality of Jesus was not just indiscriminate, it was downright promiscuous. It was there for everybody. And it might be abused, yes, but so what? Be a fool for Christ. But the kind of hospitality that is practiced in the gospel by Jesus is actually central to what we've just been celebrating at Christmas, to the truth of the feast of the Incarnation. Through his promiscuous hospitality, Jesus reenacts a truth about the Trinity, the triune God. We often say, well, what does the Trinity really give us? It's a complicated doctrine. How does it have any effect upon us? Well, the Trinity and the relationship of the Trinity calls into question everything we've ever assumed about the structure of reality in our modern world, or in any of the world at any time. You see, we live not in a world which is made up by divisions. Divisions that rule and are ruled over by some kind of supreme being. Contrary to popular opinion, God doesn't say, oh, she's in, but he is out. That person's acceptable, but not that person. Jesus shows us that we do not live in that kind of world and that we do not worship that kind of God. But actually, we live in a universe that is tightly bound, and everybody is called into an intimate relationship with God. Divine hospitality lies at the heart of a doctrine of the Holy Trinity. It lies actually at the heart of all creation. Divine hospitality, where nobody is a stranger, where nobody is set aside because of their sexual orientation or the color of their skin or even of the way they vote or even of the way they live or where they've come from or where they might be going. Divine hospitality isn't interested in any of those things because divine hospitality is all about our redemption. And when St. Paul greets the church in Corinth, as we heard in the second reading today, what does he do? He greets that community in the name of God, and he says, you who have been called into fellowship with God and with his Son, Jesus Christ. All of you. And the Corinthian church was Paul's biggest headache. What a bunch they were. So, divine hospitality doesn't have the same rules as our understandings of hospitality. And so Jesus comes into the world to show that God doesn't have these stupid divisions that we have and we put there because, of course, it's easier, isn't it? Have you ever entertained anybody off the street in your house and then had to send the covers off your three-piece suite to be cleaned afterwards? It's happened to me a couple of times. It's not nice. Or that person that you perhaps pick up and rescue somewhere in a desperate situation that almost you're embarrassed to be seen with. But you take into a place and you get some food for them. You give them a warm cup of coffee, a bowl of soup, and something to eat. And people might look at you. But when you do that, you are practicing divine hospitality. So we get to this strange gospel. This funny little gospel, which I believe is very appropriate for St. George's Church on the day when it takes stock of what's gone in the past year and when we look forward to what's coming in 2014. Two men approach Jesus and ask, where are you staying? And Jesus simply says, come and see. Come and see. Andrew rushes to find his brother Simon. It's such a simple story. But the author of the fourth gospel, if it's John, seems to want us to see something very significant here. He concludes with the words that signal the very beginnings of the Christian church. You are Simon, son of John. You are to be called Cephas. John seems to want us to see that the words of simple invitation are more crucial to our faith than any orthodox, fancy-worded proclamation of our faith. This is how the church begins. How often have we as a church or a vestry talked about how we bring new people in? And then occasionally new people come in and they're told, keep your kids quiet. Don't sit there, that's my seat. And so it goes on. I've told you the story before when I was rector of St. Salvador's in Edinburgh. We had a bishop who'd been brought up in our parish, and he was invited back from where he was now the diocesan bishop to come and bless our church as it celebrated its great, I think, 100th or 70th birthday. I can't remember what it was. And his wife couldn't come with him, but his mother was still alive, and his mother had worshipped years ago in that church. And they came quite early, and his mother sat down, and my church warden, Victor Buss, walked up to the bishop's mother and said, would you move? That's my seat, please. So, this is not just crazy talk. This happens in churches. Come and see with a divine hospitality. This is the beginnings of the church, and it's about the growth of the church. Us having the courage to say, we want new people, but we can't say, well, we only want those people that think the same way as us, or go to the same club, or vote the same way, or drive the same kind of car, or shop at the same kind of supermarket. No. Price right, shop right, it's okay. Hannaford, Price Chopper, even Walmart, it's all fine. Now let me say something a little bit personal. This great country to which I came with my green card 4.25 years ago was built on welcome. This country, as it is today, was built on people saying, come and see, come and taste the American dream. If you look for a pure American, you've got to go to the Native American Indians. I know in this congregation we've got Polish ancestry, we've got Irish ancestry, we've got English, we've got Dutch, we've got the whole darn lot here, have we not? This country was an experiment in saying, come and see and be welcome. You know as well as I do, if you go down to New York City and you stand at Ellis Island, there you see the processing center, where many, many people began a new life when they were told welcome. Right next door to Ellis Island is the famous Statue of Liberty. On the reverse side of that statue is a powerful piece of prose called The New Colossus, a sonnet written by an American Jewish poet called Emma Lazarus. She died in 1887. She wrote The New Colossus in 1883. And I believe that what she wrote was a kind of mission statement for the United States. It was inscribed in 1903 on the lower level of the pedestal at the back of the Statue of Liberty. You may know the words, beautiful words. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. If those words had not been adhered to, half of your families would not be in the USA today. Nor would I, with my green card. Shouldn't that be the church's goal? To say to all those that we bump into wherever we are, come and see. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these. The homeless, tempest tossed to me, I lift my lamp beside the golden door. I think that's a wonderful mission statement for us in our ministry of hospitality. To warmly welcome anyone who longs to be free through Jesus Christ.